Hi guys, welcome to another video. In today's video I am going to cover IPv6 relay attacks. So from the name itself you can already hear that we are going to be working with IPv6 traffic, and we are going to be specifically intercepting IPv6 traffic that's moving from one user that's connected to a domain. So we're going to be intercepting traffic from one user to the domain, and we are going to use that interception to capture domain information, and that domain information is going to give us all the information we need about the domain, all the way from the users that belong to the domain and the groups that belong to the domain, as well as the policies that are made for that particular domain. Before we get into the video, I actually wanted to let you guys know a few things. As far as security certificate authorities on my domain controller, I do not have those running. So it has 4 rules, and security authority certificate authority is not one of them. I also have SMB enabled but not required for the client, but enabled and also required for the domain itself. So I left it as default. So by default, SMB signing is required for the domain controller, and SMB signing is also required for the client, but in this case I have disabled it. Right, so we have a user here that has an SMB share file going on, and then we have another user that also has SMB share going on. Now both of these users also have administrative privileges. In order to run the IPv6 relay attack, we're going to need a few tools. We're going to need Nmap, we're going to need MITM6, and we are also going to need NTLMRELAYX. MITM6 is used to intercept IPv6 traffic moving from one user to another, and NTLMRELAYX is essentially going to give us all the information that was able to be captured from that interception. Okay, so now for the IPv6 relay attack, we are going to need to open up our Nmap scan. So I've already started it, and we are going to scan for this subnet of computers. Now what we are looking for specifically is an IP address that has LDAP enabled on it. So we are going to know that that belongs to a domain controller, because in most cases domain controllers or server computers have LDAP enabled on it, so that other electronic devices are able to connect wirelessly to that particular server. So in this case we are going to look for an IP address that has LDAP, the LDAP service running on it. So our Nmap scan is done, and now we can continue to look for an IP address that has LDAP enabled on it. You have some IP addresses here. We have 167. It doesn't give us any information of use. You have one user here that belongs to this computer. You have the second Punisher, and it has SMB enabled but not required. So this is just an ordinary user that happens to have SMB enabled on their computer. You have another IP address here. That seems to, there you go. We have an IP address that has LDAP enabled on it, and this part is actually LDAPS, because this is a very secure version of the LDAP protocol, right? So the LDAP service essentially. So you have LDAP running on 636, and this is LDAPS really. And we also have another one that's running LDAP. This is the less secure version of LDAP, so it's running on port 389, and this is the service that we are looking to exploit today. Now let's go into NTLM relay and locate it. So we can go locate NTLMRELAYX.py and find out where it is, so we can start using it, right? But because I have it stored in this directory, I can actually go here. Let me clear this and just go Python and insert these arguments here. So we have -6, which means that we are going to be working with the IPv6 traffic, and then you have -t, that means the target, and then we are targeting an this IP address which belongs to the domain controller that we were talking about, the one that we saw on the Nmap scan, right? So if we go back to the Nmap scan, we can see that the IP address is actually, it ends with 140. So it's dynamic. It changes almost every day. It changes, actually I believe it's 1 day intervals, so it changes. Yeah, it changes every day. So we have LDAPS. This is the target. We are targeting the LDAPS service that's running on this IP address, right? And this is WH host, or should I say the WPAD host. And this is a file that you just create. You can name it whatever you want to name it. It's all up to you. And then you have -L here. This is going to be the root directory, and this is going to be where your information is going to be stored. So once we open up our MITM6, there's going to be an interception of the IPv6 traffic moving from one of the users to the server. And once that information is captured, it's going to be stored in this root directory here. We can actually name it 10 because I've already created some folders already. I have about 9 because I've done this multiple times. So now what we are going to do is we are going to start this, and we are going to pair this one with MITM6. But for now, let's just ensure that our computers are running properly. So we have one user here, and we are not going to need to log into either one of these computers, for now at least. So we have one user here. We have another one here. So now we can just simply start this. So now you press enter. So our NTLMRELAYX has started, and now we can go ahead and start MITM6. MITM6 has started, and now we can go ahead and restart these computers here. So this is very important. You don't need to log into this computer and trigger some sort of event that will enable you to intercept the traffic, or that is going to be targeted, that's going to be pointed at your Kali Linux machine. You don't need to do that. You can actually just restart these computers and wait for IPv6 traffic information to be captured, and it's going to be delivered directly to your NTLMRELAYX. And we're going to see as the computers restart, we are going to be capturing some packets, and we'll be able to get some information that we need. And now we start to get some information. So as the computers restart, we have an IPv6 being assigned to that particular computer, right? So you have the second punisher, and then you have the punisher. So these are some of the users that we are going to be targeting as far as the IPv6 traffic is concerned. And now it sends some spoofed replies for WPAD. This is the folder that we created. Remember I told you that you can name it whatever you want to name it. So it sends some spoofed reply to this IPv6, this IP address. So now we can go into our NTLM relay and look at what we have here. Right, so once this completes, once we get to this part that says that domain information was dumped into the root directory and all targets are processed, now we can just simply terminate this process. So we stop this, we go to MITM6, and we also stop this. So now we are okay. We are able to capture domain information, or we will be able to access this information later. And how do we access that information? Is we just simply go to the root directory that we inserted as the argument here. We have root folder, root_folder 10, right? We can also go ls and ensure that it's in here. So we have the root folder, root_folder 10. And we can actually take this a step further by creating a new user, and this user is going to have all the administrative privileges that you could possibly think of. And now when it comes to creating that user, what we are going to need to do is immediately after capturing this domain information, we are going to need to restart our terminal all over again, right? So you have to be very fast about all of this. You do not have to wait to go into your root folder and open it and start looking at all the information you were able to capture. You can actually almost immediately close this terminal and start capturing some other data, right? So because what we want to do essentially is wait for one of these users here, one of the Windows users that's connected to the server, to log in as the administrator. And once they log in as the administrator, MITM6 and NTLMRELAYX are going to create a user, and that user will have all the administrative privileges that I just talked about now. So what we want to do now is close this terminal and restart it, and we are going to run MITM6 and we are going to run NTLMRELAYX all over again. Okay, so now let's close this terminal. We close this and we restart it. I want to log in as the sudo, right? So let me insert the password. Is it Q? And while this is loading up, we can actually go into either one of these computers here. We have a user by the name of, we should have a user by the name of Lee Joy. All these are my users actually. So we have a user by the name of Lee Joy, and then we have another user by the name of Joy Blank, right? So we can log in as opposed to logging in as Lee Joy. We can switch accounts and go in as, we want to go in as the Harvester Administrator. There we go. We want to log in into this one as the administrator. Now we have to have our folders here. We have to first have our MITM6, and then we also need to have our NTLMRELAYX running, and we also need to run our MITM6. Now we should be able to intercept that IPv6 traffic and now create a new user, because the Windows user was able to log in as the administrator. So now we can just simply wait for this to capture some data. Okay, we have some information coming in. Let's go to our NTLMRELAYX and see what's up with this. No more targets left. Let's close this. We're gonna close this. Restart it. Let's go MITM6. MITM6. There you go. And just like that, there you have it. You have created a new user. Now we can terminate this process. You can go to our MITM6 and do the same thing. So just like that, we should have a user here by the name of, okay, whatever this is, and then you have a password, and you can use these details to do some metapreta sessions and so on and so forth. And it actually suggests that you use these details with a secrets dump. So what secrets dump is going to do, it's going to show you all the hashes that are available on the domain. So it's going to show you every user and all the hashes that belong to those users. So that's essentially all you have to do. So this was covering the IPv6 relay attack. It's very complicated. At some point it gets complicated because at times you have to restart this terminal all over and over and repeat the same process over again. So in a real life situation, it's going to be, I'm not quite sure if it's going to be quite practical for you to keep restarting or keep on asking one of the users or the users that are connected to a domain to keep restarting their computers. I suppose it's something that you're gonna have to do when they come from a lunch break or when they restart their computers. Anytime that they restart their computers, really. But yeah, this was just a short video on the IPv6 relay attack, and I'll shortly show you all the options you can tick on your domain controller to ensure that this does not happen to you. But before I get into the part about protecting yourself against this IPv6 relay attack, I want to show you guys something quickly. I did mention that you can access your loot directory a bit later, right? So last time we actually created a loot folder here. That's loot folder number 10. So let's just go into the loot folder and see what it has in store for us. And mind you, you cannot open this using your terminal. You have to open it externally. So you're gonna need to go to your directory and find this loot folder. So in my case, it's in the home Kali Impact Examples directory. Let's just go there and see if we can't find it. So we go, yeah, so there it is. It is. So I just go up here and go to Impact Examples actually, and go to loot folder 10, and I just open it up. So double click on the domain computers, and it should show me all the computers that are connected to the domain. So you have domain computer account at the top right here. You have the Punisher, you have the second Punisher, and then you have Anonymous. So Anonymous is running the operating system Windows Server 2016. So this is clearly the domain controller, right? Just that now we don't see the IP addresses, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna be able to see the IP addresses if we look deeper into this folder. So we saw the computer names, and let's just see all the domain policies that they have in place. You can also check the domain users, but for now let's just look at the domain policies. Let's wait for this to load up. So you also have domain groups here, domain trusts, domain computers, and so on and so forth. Firefox is already running. Domain, what are we looking at? Domain policy. So DC, that's the harvester, of course. So you have harvester local. What else do we have? It tells us that the password properties are complex, right? So alright, so the password is clearly complex. So as far as brute forcing this account, you won't be able to do that. I don't think you're gonna be able to do that, because you have a policy here that says the password is very complex. So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind as far as doing some brute force attacks on such computers. If you see that the password is complex, you are most likely not going to be able to crack it. And then you have the domain users here, right? You have Lee Joy, you have Joy Black. We saw those ones before. We know that they belong. Oh, now look at this. These are the users that we created with our MITM6 interception, right? So you can see that they have awkward names. They have very awkward names. Yeah, but essentially these guys are also able to log into the domain using, these details. Or we can use the details that we got from the MITM6 interception and use those to log into the domain itself. Mind you, it tells us that this is a normal account, but in reality, this guy has all the administrative privileges. So this is not necessarily a normal account. It's more so an administrative account. So we have that. We have a guest, an administrator, and so on and so forth. So that's the information that we can access from the folder that we create from that MITM6 relay attack. That IPv6 relay attack. So now that we have that information, we can go into the part where we actually protect ourselves against an IPv6 relay attack. And for this, we are going to need to go into the domain controller itself. Now, as we know that this was essentially just an IPv6 relay attack, and it was targeting the LDAP service, right? So now, in order for us to protect ourselves against an LDAP service attack, just like how we do on SMB relay attacks, we are supposed to enable LDAP signing, right? So just like how you would protect yourself against SMB relay attacks, you would enable SMB signing for the client and the server. The same thing should happen for the LDAP service that's running on the domain controller. So now we can go into the domain controller's PC. Let me try to log into this one. Want to log into this one. You want to go to the search tab, go to group policy management, so that's gpmc.msc. And now we can go into default domain policies, right click and go edit and go to policies, go to Windows settings, and go to security settings, go to local policies and go to security options. And in here, you should be able to see LDAP server signing requirement, right? So the domain controller LDAP server signing requirement, it's not defined. So by default, it's going to be disabled, right? So if you want to protect yourself against an IPv6 relay attack against your LDAP service, you're going to have to need to define this policy by coming in here and require signing. But for now, let's just leave it as it is. Let's just leave it as it is. And yeah, and then you're going to do that and click apply and you are done. So yeah, that's pretty much all you need. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm not gonna enable this signing because I also have to do some other things. I want to try some other attacks on this computer. But yeah, that's essentially what you have to do in order for your domain controller to be protected. You do not need to enable certificate authorities on the same server that you have your domain controller running. If you want to create a certificate authority server, it has to be separate from your domain controller. That's one of the things that you learn as you progress, right? Because one of the things I noticed on YouTube is a lot of people had issues running the MITM6 IPv6 relay attack, and a lot of them suggested that you run your certificate authority on the DC. But as I looked further into the topic, I actually noticed that you do not need to enable your certificate authority on the domain controller because it's only going to weaken your security policies. So in order for you to protect yourself against IPv6 relay attacks, you are just going to need to enable LDAP signing. I know that there's more information on this topic, so I'm going to look further into it, and I'll see if I cannot find any mitigation risks or any mitigation steps that you need to follow in order for yourself to protect against the IPv6 relay attack. So I hope you guys got some useful information on this IPv6 relay attack, and also how to protect yourself against it, how to protect your server against it. So yeah, so if you have any issues and if you have any questions regarding this topic, please just let me know in the comment section below, and I should be able to see you guys on another video, hopefully doing some more attacks on this Active Directory.